Oh, hello again. Or is this...
Howdy, Heroes Hearth. Kyle Fergusson here from Into the Nexus podcast. Let's talk about Chromie, the current, as of this patch, top win rate assassin. In the most recent balance update, Chromie received a buff to her W, her Dragon Breath build. And this was done for a very practical, innocent reason. Once again, the first time, the Q build was running away with the pick rates. So in order to incentivize players to try out some other modes of Chromie, deep breathing got buffed. And day one, Chromie's grabbed onto it. So let's talk about countering Chromie, what she's doing, what she wants, and how you in a solo league environment can help defend yourself against the tiny dragon. After her rework, a lot of Chromie players fell out of love with the character. They were addicted to the piercing sands, which became a level 20 talent. Some stuck around, but the community quickly found out that the way to avoid getting destroyed by Chromie was to use your skill shot or even Stitch's hook skills. Let other characters or minions and buildings be in front of you so you wouldn't receive the sand blasts. We also started avoiding the middle fight, so Chromie wasn't stacking her level 1 talent once again for the first time. But Chromie has always been a tricky customer to deal with. She gets her talents early via her trait. She has time traps which give a small amount of sight but massive disruption to team fights and help protect herself from incoming dives. Her heroics come online early, they are extremely disruptive to team fights, and she has a choice of survivability talents at 11. Add to that decent lane clear, stacking quests, and long range, Chromie can be a bit of a bother. The scary thing about this new W build is that it is very spammy. Sand blasts take skill to line up. But with Dragon Breath, sure, there's some aiming, particularly when we get to Mobius Loop. But the cooldown reduction part of the level 1 quest, combined with Temporal Loop's 500% cooldown reductions, means that there is massive amounts of AoE raining down on the team fights from a safe range with ridiculous speed. And it can be hard to counter her because these spells are flying so regularly. Sandblast is on a 3-second cooldown. Dragon Breath is on a 14-second cooldown. When Chromie completes her level 1 quest, that cooldown goes to 9 seconds, and the damage of Dragon Breath is increased by 30%. It is not difficult for Chromie to hit 20 heroes, particularly if you have a prolonged middle fight. There's also a mana cost reduction from 65 mana per Dragon Breath down to 30. At level 5, Chromie takes advantage of Mobius Loop, which allows Dragon Breath to deal 50% bonus damage to enemies hit in the center. And it's a rather generous center. Enemies that are hit by the center are slowed by 60% for 1 second. So we're looking at a large teamfight AoE hitting multiple targets with a 9-second cooldown, dealing massive damage. In the patch notes, they incentivized slowing sands, but nobody cared. Everybody was excited about the 500% cooldown reduction with Temporal Loop. This takes the Dragon Breath cooldown to about 1.5 seconds. And on your second cast of Dragon Breath, you're looking at a cooldown of about 2 seconds. Now, of course, this isn't as accurate as the Sandblast build, but when it comes to end-of-game numbers, the Dragon Breath Deep Breathing build looks amazing. So this Chromie build is going to catch on really quick. We can say that it's hitting multiple targets, this isn't very effective damage. We're always battling perception in Heroes of the Storm, and Chromie is now perceived to be an extremely strong character with this build. And if you're thinking to yourself, that's a lot of damage, but I'm not too concerned. I scale, I get Spell Shield at later levels. Chromie has later levels too, she's just getting them early. At 11, there's a pretty even split between Gnome Speed Ahead, which is more popular in solo queue, and Time Out, which is more popular in coordinated play. At level 14, most players are still going Shifting Sands, which could be mistaken for a Sandblast talent, but gives you just flat spell power up to a maximum of 50%. Sandblast refreshes this, so you're raining down Dragon Breaths with increased spell power. By the way, I'm glancing over level 2 talents. They have pretty much a perfect split in popularity between them. It's very much a personal choice, though Chromie mains are likely to argue as to which one's best. Scary stuff, right? What we have is a spamming long-range mage. with a lot of survivability thanks to talents that they receive early. Let's talk about how to counter this incoming Chromie wave. The first place most of our minds go is gank her, dive her, don't let her be comfortable. And you're not wrong. Chromie is weak to Sammy, Tracer, Illidan, and Nova. But interestingly enough, she has a very high win rate into the likes of Valeera and Zeratul. Now this could be for a number of reasons. Valeera's time to kill might be slower, and timeout may allow Chromie to get her team to help her out. When it comes to Zeratul, this seems like a Tychus giant killer situation. A lot of people pick Zeratul into Chromie thinking it's a counter who can't actually play Zeratul. So when counter drafting an assassin, make sure you can actually play the hero. When it comes to ranged assassins, you need to be careful. Ranged assassins are very squishy and very vulnerable to Temporal Loop. Even those with late game spell shields aren't likely to get to that late game before they've been farmed on multiple times. Zagara, Lunara, Li Ming are just too darn squishy to deal with Chromie, even though they may attack her from unique angles. So sure, we need some dive, we need some survivability. What about bruisers? Well, the majority of bruisers actually aren't performing that well into Chromie. A lot of them have power based on destroying enemy tanks. And two of these were even taking some liberties and calling them bruisers, Cho'Gall and Tyrael, but both have the mobility and the staying power to deal with her for an extended period of time. Rexxar has the ability to catch the Sandblast with the bear while keeping the bear harassing Chromie. And my personal favorite, Deathwing, can land right on top of her, while being entirely immune to Temporal Loop, can't even cast it on him, and he can walk right through Slowing Sands without feeling the effect. The other bruisers in terms of win rate are just doing okay. Chen is 50%. Leoric is 50%, despite having what might be a pretty cool counter with his ominous Wraith. However, that leaves his body sitting still, where it can be easily sandblasted. Muradin is also around that 50% mark, able to dive Chromie, but leaving his team perhaps without a tank. So he'd need to be drafted as a bruiser if we're hoping for Muradin to be a counter pick. In fact, the majority of our tanks are really bad into Chromie, have really bad win rates. They have to abandon their team in order to deal with Chromie. It shouldn't be the tank's job. They're also heavily disrupted by the time traps. Diablo, Mal'Ganis, all get stuck on those things and end up ruining their own engages. And even though he seems to be designed as the premier anti-mage tank, Anubarak simply can't deal with the damage output. And Johanna, with her Iron Skin cooldown increase in the recent patch, can't survive the onslaught, and the Unstoppable is cancelled if the shield breaks, which it will. In fact, it's way better to draft something teamfight oriented, like Arthas, Mei, or Garrosh. Manage the 4 other teammates, and let your gank assassin or dive bruiser deal with Chromie directly. And that's not even where the real counter is happening. The real counter is happening on the support end. Cleanse and armor are the real way to deal with Chromie. We need to pressure her with our assassins and bruisers, but if we can't survive her combo, she's gonna get the kill before our allies get theirs. Rhaegar, Uther, all sportin' nice old school cleanses. And Whitemane has a cleanse at 7, as well as a heck of a good heroic to deal with all this sandblasting, dragon raining nonsense. Granted, Whitemane's a little more rare right now, they're still not too happy with their recent rework, but she's got a lot of power into this situation. Win rate wise, there are those healers and supports who are bad into Chromie. Medivh seems like a perfect pick, able to force of will a team member through the thick of the Chromie blasts. With a 9-second cooldown, Force of Will cannot compete with 3-second sandblasts, and Dragon's Breath also on a 9-second cooldown, and less if fired when within Temporal Loop. Save your Medivh comments, we're talking about solo queue here. Ana is too slow, stands still a lot. Deckard, frankly too slow, and not going to be putting rubies where the fight's happening around Chromie. Stukov, the king of standing still, is absolutely going to get nuked down from afar. For those Brightwing fans out there, Brightwing's doing okay, a flat 50%. Pixie Dust reduces spell damage and increases movement speed, allowing dodges to happen more easily. Before 10, Brightwing has a little bit of trouble topping up her team, but ultimately is just fine. Still no cleanse though. And while we're talking about it, do not take standstill heroes. Zul'jin Hammer, Gul'dan all have horrible win rates into Chromie. Now when it comes to maps for Chromie, you can expect to see her anywhere there's a lot of walls and in the 4-man lane because she's stacking. Though she's seeing the most picks on Volskaya, Chromies really enjoy firing into that objective. You'll likely see her on things like Braxis, Alterac Pass, though our win rate's starting to go down from there, and you actually don't have to worry about her on Towers of Doom, in solo queue anyway. When we only factor in Chromie's Dragon Breath build, we're looking at a 65% win rate for the hero. If you get a Chromie on your team, things are already looking pretty darn good. But if you wanted to encourage that Chromie on your team, help by making things stand still and CCing them, hopefully soaking that cleanse before Chromie casts her Temporal Loop. Lucky for you, there's a bit of a trick to Temporal Loop. First of all, it's got a smaller range than her normal abilities. Chromie does have to step up in order to get this ability cooking. Secondly, because Dragon Breath comes down in 3 waves, she's likely to target it where you're going to run away. So instead, walk towards Chromie on the other side of a Temporal Loop. Get in her face. So we got a lot of cute counters. There may be heroes you play that I didn't mention who can pull it off. But ultimately, the responsibility is falling to our healers to be able to land super impactful cleanses. And easy ones too, because they're reactionary. Just make sure they're still unstoppable when the rewind hits for the Temporal Loop. Good luck out there. Be sure to like, subscribe, and ring that bell here at Heroes Hearth. And I'll see you next week with more Learn to Play, and sometimes Learn to Counter videos for Heroes of the Storm.